Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is Office Hours. It is let me get the number. I should have got that. It is episode number 2234. Gadzooks, that's so many episodes. We've been doing this since COVID, and we talk about tech stuff. And today is audio focused, and we have a great panel here. So let's get started. Can we read the first question, please?
First question this morning is coming in from TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm probably late to this discussion, but I just saw that Blackmagic Design released a Fairlight Live console that can supposedly handle 1,000 inputs and has motorized faders. Any thoughts from the panel?
Please tell me it's 1,000 faders wide. I want to see a picture of this thing. Jeff Francis.
It's two separate things. There's the software, which is free, and that's going to handle inputs based on your computer. And then it's a controller, and I think they have 3 different frame sizes of the controller. Those are most certainly not free. But TJ, give me a couple of weeks, a month or something, get some free time, and I'm going to download that and play with the software portion of it, which looks interesting.
What about you, Mickey? Would you trust a brand new free mixer for a live event?
Would I trust a brand new free mixer? No, not without extensive testing, which I've done a little bit of testing the past couple of weeks. Well, not really testing, but playing around with it, and it's nowhere near ready for deployment in a production environment. But for me, what I see here is a nice push for other vendors, other manufacturers, in terms of what they're doing with not only other software mixers, but also hardware mixers. What they can do at the price point that they're selling their solutions at, hundreds of thousands of dollars. If a free piece of software can do what BMD claims it would be able to do, then I can expect more from the likes of Lavo, the likes of Calrec. I have a reason to push them more and nudge them more.
Yeah, if we think about our industry, both audio and video, there's very few products that have had like massive acceptance to the point where they seem like they're unchallengeable. Like nobody's gonna mess with this. I can remember the mixer when I was doing sports. It was the Yamaha something 4000.
01V?
No. It was way before that. I can't remember what it was. It was ML, not ML. That's Allen and Heath.
PM4000.
PM4000. Yeah, it was everything. It was everywhere. It was everywhere. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine used to rent them, and he had like a dozen of them. And he always said, he goes, when all the Yamahas come home, I don't have enough room to store them, because he'd lease them out for big tours and stuff like that. And one time he sent, I think, 8 or 10 of them to do like the Grammys. And they were all backstage doing all the monitor mixes way before any sort of, digital, store a file, put your USB stick in. But when something new comes, it's very interesting to watch how it either gains acceptance or doesn't. Alexander, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so there's 2 parts, right? So the Fairlight app, which is currently in beta, they've posted beta 2, and they're making continual changes to that. It's a really interesting application. I think the fact that you can just use it with any core audio enabled interface, I think is really cool. I know some people that have been testing with Dante Virtual Sound Card, and like was said previously, because there's no DSP processing. It's based on whatever your computer CPU, GPU is capable of doing. So, but Grant did mention in the live stream that they had a demo running on a $600 MacBook Neo with 8 gigs of RAM, which, by the way, is running an iPhone processor, not even an M series processor. Cool. And they had quite a lot of tracks running in there. So it remains to be seen how stable it'll be in the end. Again, it's ongoing and being developed. at a pretty rapid pace. As far as the console surfaces are interesting, they've got 3 different sizes of that console, but my understanding of this, there's still no DSP in those consoles. I think they're just control surfaces for controlling it. However, I think it's very, very cool that Fairlight as an app allows you to now run VST plugins in it, and it seems to have good metering. They took some of the Fairlight stuff that's baked into DaVinci Resolve. Like, I like the loudness meter that can be fully customized. I think that's really cool. I think having an app where you can process audio in a broadcast environment in there on, you can stick in like a really fast Mac Studio with tons of CPU cores and GPU cores. It'll probably run pretty well, but you're going to have to test it in a production environment. Once it comes out of beta, I would test it for an extensive period of time before I trust it. Because plugins, that's the thing with this stuff, because it's software based. The moment you start running third-party plugins can quickly destabilize any piece of software. And sometimes it's not necessarily the fault of the manufacturer of that plugin. It could be a fault on both parties, that just like the Blackmagic app. I mean, I've had Resolve crash with Waves plugins. The moment I take those Wave plugins out of the equation, Resolve is pretty stable. So again, that's something you just got to test and see. Every environment is going to be completely unique based on the different plugins and software packages that are installed on that computer.
Yeah, there's one thing we know. Audio engineers love, adopting and using tools that the video people use. Mickey.
Yeah, there is. They do have a DSP card or DSP cards that they mentioned would work with Fairlight Live, but I don't know of anyone that actually uses them, and no one. The folks that use Fairlight built into Resolve for work tend to be on the lower end of things and don't tend to invest in DSP dedicated DSP processors. So I have no clue if these DSP cards are of any good.
Jeff?
And I think to the point of the question, there is this integration with the console, because he does mention the motorized faders. So the whole point really of the release is that while the software, Fairlight Live, can work with various hardware, obviously there's going to be tight integration with their own consoles. As Alexander said, there's 3 different sizes, but I think that's the big picture here, is this integration with their consoles.
Yeah, and like Alexander mentioned, the fact that just remember, if it's not obvious, there are many pieces of audio gear that no audio goes through. It might be just a big fancy mouse. Let's go to the next question.
All right, this one is coming in from Jeff Francis in Columbia, South Carolina. Latency camera to display question. Can an NDI HX3 with OBS software switcher achieve as low latency as a SDI with a hardware switcher?
Mickey.
Short answer is no. First off, with NDI, the signal is going through compression. That compression stage adds a couple frames of latency right then and there. And then, assuming the NDI signal is transporting through a network, you have a couple hops of latency, a couple milliseconds per hop of latency. And a software switcher that's running on general purpose CPU, computing CPUs, tend to require a good amount of buffer, because the OS will prioritize what the OS wants to prioritize. So the software switchers require having a buffer there, so that when the priority shifts to another process, Mac OS wants to force you to update to Tahoe, and your computer works on that instead. There is enough of leeway there for with latency to allow the processor to shift what it's doing. So you will never get as low latency as standard baseband uncompressed, especially if things are gen locked.
Yeah, I would also add, I'm just going to jump in here, Jason. Sorry, Jason will be next.
All good.
Hold on. What was I going to say? latency camera. Jason, go ahead.
So I'll just jump in here. Mickey's answer was excellent, and the only scenario. So no, and almost certainly no, unless you're really going to be very creative about which camera and which display under which circumstances. But even then, not really.
I know what I was going to say. So if the SDI is going through a hardware switcher, it may be less latency if you time the camera and use Genlock so that you don't have to use the frame
resynchronizer. Yeah,
resynchronizer, because that's going to add time. It's crazy how we get so obsessed over these little milliseconds. And Mr. Francis.
Yeah, I was just my gut and every fiber of my being screamed no when someone offered to me an NDI, and especially an HX slightly compressed NDI solution in place of SDI. This is for iMag, so the actual latency absolutely matters. And they were trying to save a little bit of money off the budget by offering this, and every fiber of my being screamed no, and was looking for a confirmation of that. So thanks.
My favorite iMag story, I've told it before, is when U2 was touring, doing the Zoo Tour, their manager kept going up to the lighting guy saying, "Hey, the big 9 lights that they used to flash on the audience during Bullet the Blue Sky." He goes, "Hey, can you move that a couple of frames this way or that way?" And he was doing it night after night. And he'd move it a frame this way or 2 frames that way. And then finally the lighting designer said, he goes, "So where are you? Where do you watch the show from?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm all over the stadium." And he goes, "Okay, well, stop giving me direction then. Because the latency of just the distance of the sound versus the light in different seats in the auditorium, in the arena, not an auditorium, this arena tour." He goes, "I don't want to hear any input from you anymore. You don't get to tell me where to program this stuff." Let's go to the next question.
This one's coming in from John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. I noticed some mainstream network spots are using DJI mics or just including bad audio, so give a vibe that mimics social media creators. What are your thoughts?
Mr. Francis.
So I actually had this from a person who, is a journalist and does spots for candidates. And he was basically like, the things that we can do with a DJI for $250, you can't get in a professional system for even 10 times that cost. So like for $250, you get 2 of these wireless transmitters and a receiver, and they record locally and they have rechargeable batteries.
It's pretty cool.
And so it's very cool. And like the Pro equipment has not kept up with the features that are here. And some of them actually have like a noise assist, a noise reduction software. Does it sound good? They don't care. It's convenient.
Right.
It's convenient and it's cheap.
Yeah. At some point you just say, this is enough. Enough is enough. We got it. Okay. Alexander.
I don't really have anything nice or polite to say about this. There's a term that...
Same.
There's a term that Cory Doctorow has coined, and I can't say it on this show, but there's been a very significant downgrade in professional results in a lot of shows. And I've seen this trickle into what used to be higher-end broadcasting. In this example, John, that you're talking about, where they are using these types of consumer-grade mics, and they fail sometimes because they're 2.4 gigahertz. I can't really go in it. They shouldn't be using this stuff.
Put the Cory Doctorow quote in the chat. I need to know. Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, I was trying to find some examples. We've all seen them. They just crack me up. I've seen folks put them onto a playing card so they can hold that out to the other person. I've seen them put them on like a pen or pencil and hold that in someone's face.
I saw somebody put it on a big kitchen spoon, a big long, that you'd stir the soup with. And
it just looks ridiculous. And I will say, I don't know that the quote unquote professional broadcasters are intentionally going for this vibe. I think it comes down to ignorance is bliss, and Jason is setting one up for us. But they are just accustomed to hearing that, and the bar is absolutely going down. But I will say this, I kind of have two thoughts on this. My purist side says it's horrible for good quality audio. The bar does continue to go down. But on the flip side, the stations are now sending these quote-unquote journalists. They're not sending them out with a full truck with a cameraman and a sound guy and all this other stuff. They're sending them out with no one. They say, take your iPhone and go get an interview. And so can you blame that individual journalist for not wanting to carry a whole mic kit when they can have that in their pocket? And by the way, with all the post-processing, quote-unquote, AI, audio repair and all this stuff, you get usable results. So it's also, and time is everything. They can turn that around really quick. I mean, it's hard to blame them, but it looks ridiculous, and it absolutely sounds horrible, and it is lowering the bar for everything.
I'm going to jump in here just for a second. We're starting to sound like, get off my lawn. Yes, it might look ridiculous to us, but there is a vibe to it. It very well may be possible that they hired like some social media YouTuber because they like their end result. Just do your thing.
Yes, because they're deaf.
Years ago, well, hold on. Years ago, I believe it was Nike, may not be, hired Casey Neistat to do a commercial for the movie The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. And they said, do a promotional spot, not a commercial, but a promotional thing for Walter Mitty. You can do whatever you want. Here's the money. And Casey Neistat just did a Casey Neistat video. And he took the money and he went to, I believe he went to the Philippines, Mickey, or somewhere in the Southeast Asia. And there had been a big typhoon, and he spent all the money on the typhoon victims. And so they just said, do the thing. So maybe they just hired one of these type kids because they liked their end result. They didn't care about the process. Let's keep going. Mickey, you're next.
Yeah, just to touch on what you said, Chris, I know both locally and internationally, a bunch of the production houses we work with have mentioned to us that they are finding themselves having to compete with creators that charge, a tenth or a fifth, 1/50th of what, say, if they would shoot a commercial budget of $100,000-$200,000 for an ad campaign. They'd have to they find themselves competing with creators that say, "Yeah, I can do this for $2,000." That's very true. That the marketing landscape has shifted. Shifting towards talking about audio side of things, I personally I tie in like low production value with a low quality. In my mind, that tells me this is a low quality product, a low quality brand, a low quality company, and I feel the same way with when I see ads on say YouTube or social media that's AI generated primarily, and there are good AI generated ads, but majority of them are just absolute garbage, and that immediately tells me this company doesn't care about their communication with their customers. This company doesn't care about their how they appear in front of their customers. So it probably means their products aren't that good. That's what happens subconsciously in my mind. So there's perhaps the newer generation that doesn't happen, but for me, I immediately tie poor production quality, especially in marketing and communications with customers, to a poor product.
And Mr. Francis, wrap it up.
I'm going to go back to what Chris said. This is the vibe. One of my students was making a promotional video for the school, had a bunch of students talking. All of them were doing I'm going to hold the little microphone here. And I was like, you have access to wireless lapels. You have access to booms. He's like, that's the look we want.
Yeah.
That's the look we want.
Yeah, it's crazy. Show of hands, how many people have heard of Peter McKinnon, the photographer, YouTuber guy? So
Big fan.
Peter McKinnon of course, he's Canadian. Of course you're a big fan. So he just did a new vlog, I hate that word, from New York City. And there was a sense of urgency in a lot of production styles. And the quick, I grabbed the mic, or yes, this vibe, there is a sense of urgency. And Peter McKinnon, not only did he not have a tripod to shoot his stand-up, he talked about how he didn't have a tripod with him. He remarked about how I should really bring a tripod, but I didn't bring a tripod. And not only that, he shot a sequence of him grabbing the camera, pointing at something like a big box that he had in his hand, putting it on the table, and then clearly he then put the camera on top of the box, and then he walked around and sat in front of it, and he was too high, so he hey, yeah, so I forgot to bring my tripod. And he featured his inadequacy in planning or being 5 blocks from B&H. He could have gone and bought a tripod, but he made his lack of a tripod a featured element in his vlog post. And I kept thinking, yes, it seems like just poor planning, but there was a sense of urgency. Like, I care about you, my listeners, so much that I'm going to go ahead and get this done with, even though I didn't bring a tripod. And I think we're done. Let's go to the next question.
And this one is coming in from Harold Williams in Portsmouth. Can anyone explain how to get noise assist to work on a MixPre 3V2? I understand there is some configuration necessary for it to work well.
Harold, you are a lucky man. You came to the right place. You get a Mickey answer. Go, Mickey.
Yeah, I don't have a MixPre with me right now, but I can talk through it.
Probably one down the hall.
Downstairs there are a couple. But yeah. First off, you do need to purchase a license for noise assist. You can buy either a single instance or a 2-instance license for it. And when you get the license, you are given a serial number that you enter on the MixPre. This would be in the plugins menu within the MixPre. Once you have that, you can assign the instances to either input channels or mix buses on the MixPre. And once you've assigned those, you can dial in how much noise reduction you are adding. This would be in negative figure. So if you want 6 dB of noise reduction, you dial in -6. You want 3 dB, you dial in -3. But I just want to make sure that you're aware that a standard MixPre 2 does not come with the noise assist plugin built in. You have to buy the instances.
And I will tell you that
it costs as much as your sound card.
I love it though. It
is the best.
It makes what I do in this chair in this room possible. As soon as we're done with the show, I have a bunch of VOs I need to record. I'm sitting in a Bermuda Triangle of hard drives that make noise. And I would not be able to do what I do in this chair if it weren't for noise assist. Jeff Cohen?
And I'll just add, and I can put a link in the chat, but they actually have a whole separate guide just for noise assist. So it'll walk you through exactly what Mickey was explaining, how to, of course, buying the license is a good first step, but it'll explain how to enable it, and as Mickey pointed out, assigning it to a mic or a mix, and then how to dial it in. And you do, depending on the room, at least in my experience, do have to tweak it a little bit and kind of get it just right. But I'll drop a link into the chat.
Yeah, it's not much of a tweak. It's more or less. That's basically it. I will say this, that on a MixPre, you can put it on a channel, which is what I've done. I put it on my mic channel. You can also put it on the left or right. So let's say you're in the field and you have 4 microphones, I guess on MixPre you have 3 microphones that you're mixing together. You could put the noise assist just on the left channel and do nothing on the right channel, so you have that option in post. And also, I wanted to do this, so I'm going to turn my noise assist off. I have mine set at -10 dB, so there it is off. Turn your speakers up, put your headphones on. This is unacceptable. And then I go back down to -10. Boop, boop. Right there. Anyway, I love it. Let's go to the next question.
This one's coming in from Robert A. Ober in Houston, Texas. Hey, folks, specifically, has anyone found bugs in Pro Tools 2026.4? Thought I'd ask before I start a personal project.
Oh, bugs. Go, Alexander.
Never install a new piece of software before you start a new project. That's what I would suggest you to avoid.
Well, hold on, wait.
But
we always tell people don't install when you're in the middle of a project. Now you've gotten it to don't install if you're about to start a new project. When do you install new software?
What I will say about this is that if I told you, Robert, that I am running 2026.4 and it's stable, that is not going to necessarily translate to stable for you because there are a lot of variables involved. For example, like we probably don't have the same computer. We probably don't have the same operating installed. We don't have the same suite of third-party plugins installed that can affect system stability. So if I told you that, it wouldn't necessarily translate to it being perfectly stable. So my suggestion would be to do that project first and then after install it on a computer and then thoroughly test it.
I totally disagree. This is the perfect time, Robert. It's a personal project that, to me, personal project means, like nobody's standing over your shoulder, that's going to never work with you again. This is the perfect time to do it. Install it, play with it, figure it out. It's probably
but you were the guy that ran Tahoe from day one, so come on.
Yeah, and look, I'm still here. I'm still standing, Alexander. Mickey, what's your thoughts? When can I upgrade my software?
Never. You're not allowed. I don't allow it.
Yeah, I think what Alex is getting to, like if it's a personal project where you can just, okay, I'll delay things a couple of days because this version of the software isn't working right, then fine. Use this as your R&D testing phase for the new version of the software. But if this is something that actually needs to get done, you have a deadline. Then I would agree with Alex where he says like do not install right before starting a new project on the same system that you're using for the same project. In a typical production environment, you would have separate R&D systems and separate time to do the R&D prior to deploying a new piece of hardware, piece of software, so firmware update, software update into your actual production environment. Do it in your lab first, do the testing there, verify usability, reliability, make sure it works before you deploy in your production.
I'm looking at the wrong screen. Who's next? Jeff.
Yeah, first of all, I do agree with Chris in the sense that since this is a personal project, I agree that's, if there's ever a time, that is the ideal time to do testing. And I will tell you one thing I've found a good AI project is, as I'm evaluating but not yet updating my Mac OS, I took a complete dump of every application installed on my Mac, built a list, every plugin I have in my DAW, etc. And then I dumped that into AI. I used Gemini, so I built the whole thing and used the deep research. And I said, I have all this. Now tell me the pros and cons of upgrading. And it did a pretty impressive job of pointing out minor issues, what it defined as deal breakers or showstoppers, like this will absolutely not work. Now, of course, always verify, but it's a good jumping off point. And so you might do the same, as Alexander pointed out, every system is different. So particularly maybe plugins or whatever you have with Pro Tools in that specific case, but it's a great way to kind of at least do your initial research to what might you expect.
So Alexander, can I ask you a question? Do do you have this
Yes.
poster on your wall?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let me go grab it. I'll be right back.
Classic.
I have that on a shirt, actually. I printed that. You want a copy?
Let's go to the next question.
All right, this one's coming in from Jeff Francis in Columbia, South Carolina. ISO, an inexpensive DAW interface / monitor controller for 714 speaker setup, 12 analog line outputs. Speaker processing is a bonus.
So Mr. Francis, are you saying in search of ISO?
Yes. I know, it's confusing.
Little
In search of-
Craigslist vernacular there, huh? Alexander, your answer.
Yeah, so define inexpensive. I wouldn't call this cheap, but the Audient Aurea has more outputs than you want. It does have processing. They released this. It's a fairly new product. They released it, I think, a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, and it has support for Dolby Atmos. It has speaker processing, delay management, EQ, all that sort of thing. And if you want to calibrate your room, you can optionally. They have a deal with Sound ID Reference. You can use their software, which is, I believe, integrates into their mixer control panel that allows you to calibrate your room if you're going for an Atmos setup. Now, I don't know what it retails for in the U.S., but up in Canada, it's $4,000. But that's the first thing that came to mind when you posted that question. Sorry, I don't have a cheap.
I don't know if he'd call that inexpensive, but Mickey, what would you buy?
I would get the right tool for the job. Buy once, cry once, because that in the long term would save you money. I'm assuming people are working in the ProTools environment here, especially since you're doing immersive work. I'd go with a Matrix Studio. It's the little baby brother of what you're hearing me through now, which is the Matrix 2. It does come with I'm sure you're familiar, Jeff, with the SPQ processing. The SPQ card on my Matrix 2, that alone is $3,000 US. The Matrix Studio, the little baby brother, is $5,000. So, and you're getting a ton of I/O. Your I/O is, of course, DigiLink, USB-C. DigiLink allows you to connect your Avid DSP cards, which you would want, especially if you're creating larger immersive mixes. USB-C Dante comes built right in, as well as, of course, your analog I/O and a couple of AES I/O as well. I believe 8 channels or 16 channels of AES3. But yeah, it's absolutely designed to do this. It comes with, as I mentioned, SPQ card. It is Yukon native, so if you're already in the Yukon environment with your controllers and also Pro Tools talking to your interface and controlling your interface and your routing and your soloing your monitors, you're already there. It's absolutely purpose built for this. If you want something that's a little step down in cost, I agree. Aurea, although I haven't used it myself, I want to make sure people know I haven't used it myself. But from what I've read and also just based on the specs itself, it seems like a very capable interface / monitor controller. But if you look at it, it's on Sweetwater, $3,500 US versus the Matrix Studio, which is $5,000. So just another $1,500 US, and you get a Matrix, which is, by the way, the Matrix product line is created by Digital Audio in Denmark, like absolute perfection in terms of, perfection is a strong word, amazing converters in the products created by Digital Audio Denmark. Not too much of a fan of their preamps, but the converters are really, really rock solid.
Okay, so I have stuff I'm supposed to say. I got it too late on the wrong computer. Yeah. So there's a thing here. You can go to that, learn much more about the show. If you want to help with the show, go to officehours.com/volunteer, I think, or join. Is it join? Help me out. Join. And then if you want to support the show, because it is a 5013, you can go to officehours.com/donate. And if you just want to ask a question, you can go to and this one allows you to ask questions. So I'm really bad at this. I got that information. I asked for the information late. I got it right when I asked for it. Let's go to the next question.
This one is coming in from, there we go, Douglas Carmichael. I saw a video of the A&H DT168 Dante I box connected directly to a console without a switch in between. Has anyone ever directly connected Dante devices before? And Douglas has got a link to a YouTube video there.
Mr. Francis.
All the time. Let's remember that most hardware Dante devices will have a primary and secondary port. Oftentimes you can set those to be daisy chain mode, which makes those two ports a little mini switch. So you're actually connecting with a switch.
And Mickey?
Yeah, absolutely. If you do not need to connect additional devices apart from the stage box and the board itself, just connect them directly. Most of the Dante native mixers, Dante native capable mixers, especially like the Yamahas, you can do your subscriptions, your patching directly in the board itself. There's no need for computer, no need for Dante controller. Just do it as if it's a dedicated standalone stage box that's running on proprietary connection like S-Link or whatever Avid uses now, AVB.
And let's go to the next question.
This one up next is from Hazmat Gajar in Cape Town. Host weekly Zoom meeting for medical school. Need to bypass their podium setup, solve video chain, room projector, and into Zoom. Need to bypass their PA system. Suggest low-cost mixer, talent mic, 2 wireless mics for Q&A, and speakers setup/breakdown.
Mickey, why don't you build Hazmat a system here? Go for it.
I'm not going to touch on the PA system because without knowing the room, how much coverage, how many watts I need to cover the entire venue, I can't really give an answer there. But regarding a low-cost mixer for the relatively small amount of channels you're working with here, I know Hasmuk, you already have a Yamaha DM3D. I would just use that, or if you require a separate system, I would get another Yamaha DM3D. But yeah, regarding the speakers, I can't comment without knowing what the venue is like and getting measurements.
All right, let's go to the next question.
This one is coming up from Paul Vahus in Austin, Texas. Insta360 jumped into Pro Wireless with an e-ink lab. Is a camera maker credible as an audio brand day one, or do you stay clear on paid jobs? Sorry, I just couldn't read that with a straight face.
Mickey, you want to take this?
No, just knowing the link that you posted, Paul doesn't really give much detail in terms of what the wireless system is and what its features are like, what bands it works on. But just knowing the kind of market that Insta360 works or serves, I would presume that the type of solution that they would put out would be, extremely cheap, sub $1,000 wireless systems, most likely working in the 2.4 or 5 gigahertz range. So, and those systems you wouldn't use in a professional setting. Those would be, for your what consumers or prosumers or enthusiasts would work with. You wouldn't be using that system in a professional environment.
Mickey, I have additional intel which may sway your decision. The microphone has a smiley face on it. Does that change your opinion of it?
The more I don't like it because I want frowny, angry face. That's what I'm looking for in a wireless microphone system.
I'm always looking for mics that have smiley faces on them. Let's go to the next question.
This question is from Douglas Carmichael. Anyone have experience with the Neumann MT48 audio interface? I'm seriously considering it for a mobile system.
Tell us what you think, Alexander.
It's a really cool interface. It's basically a product that, so Neumann bought another pro audio company, and I should have
Merging.
merging technology. That's right. I think this is based on the Anubis product, but it's basically that with a Neumann badge on it. So DSP processing wise, incredibly powerful in a tiny little box. And I believe when they first released that they talked about in a future firmware upgrade that it would have Dante compatibility via an AES update. And then I believe, Mickey, they did issue that firmware update. That was a few years ago, so it should be okay now.
Mickey?
Yeah, it's not only a firmware update, but it is a separate license that you have to purchase a Dante license for it. I haven't tried the Neumann branded version of it, but I have tried the merging version of it from way back. And I don't know if it's the processor or just the UI, but it's very, very unresponsive and difficult to work with. I don't know if they've improved that with the Neumann version, but it was not a fun interface to have to work with. It was really infuriating to go through the interface and do your routes. Neumann wouldn't put out a product that wouldn't be able to deliver, but I'm curious to know if they've improved the UI.
Let's go to the next question.
I gotta admit, we haven't sold very many of those. But anyways, next question is coming up from James Fossley in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The woodturners last night in Focus Show mentioned needing to hear the audio of wood turning live, sound of chisel on wood, and voice, but maybe reducing the level of vacuum noise. Can this be done?
That's an interesting question. And to be clear, wood turning is a lathe. That's a powered thing. When I saw chisel on wood, I was thinking of the very sort of intimate sound of a hand chiseling wood, but I think she's talking about the spinning on the lathe. Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, so I didn't get to watch it yet, unfortunately, but in general, when you're talking about sounds that could be wildly different in terms of volume, I mean, this goes to mixing any kind of live production. Now, everything is in fairly close proximity to each other, so depending on what the mix is going through, obviously you can use traditional things like compression and limiters. But I will say this is also where the value of either digital mixers like a Fairlight Live or other mixers, or interfaces that are digitally controlled, and that's where we talk a lot about stream decks, how handy they are for live production. So if you have that ability with, again, a digital mixer or something, you can have a preset. So if you're about to go to the super loud vacuuming, you can just quickly hit a preset, change your levels while you're doing that. I don't even know if there's still a way to talk and be heard well over the vacuuming, but at least you can do this, and it's just a quick way to switch it if you have the ability of having a full set of mix presets.
Mickey, what would you do?
So yeah, regarding specifically about what James is asking about, which is the vacuum noise. Yes, there's a lot that could be done. Number one would be to put the actual vacuum mechanism, the motor, the noisy stuff, actually put it far away, put it in a different room, and run a long line. Of course, this would need to be a much stronger shop vac, or what some shops do is have a centralized vacuum system that is pulling from multiple places within the shop. But the key thing is getting the source of the noise away. But if you're also talking about the noise of the lathe itself, the motor, then you would want to work with physics and get your signal to noise ratio better, which is, I think, something we saw that Cindy does, which is putting a nice headset microphone that's very close to her mouth, right. And that ensures that the pickup gets much more of her voice. Gets a proximity, allows her to turn down the gain on whatever the preamp is. I believe she's using a body pack transmitter. The gain doesn't need to be high there because the microphone is very close. That means the relative pickup of the motor of the lathe is brought down. Now, there was a discussion about actually getting more effects, more sound of the woodworking coming through, and that's a different discussion. That's but having that isolation of the voice allows you to control the different sources of sounds much better.
I think what I would look into, and I have a little bit of experience with this. A couple of years ago, I was working on a project in my garage on our Zoom channel, and a lot of the guys would hop in during the day, and I was literally just wearing my AirPods on my phone in Zoom, and I was concerned that when I fired up the table saw, it was too obnoxious. And everybody said, no, it's fine. The noise cancellation of just the AirPods was enough. So that gets me to think that I would put one channel of noise, like maybe like a noise assist, on my vocal mic as close as possible. If you want to hear the chatter of the chisel on the wood, I would put a mic very close to it. Don't let it get wrapped up in the lathe, because that'd be a fun video to watch. Whap, whap, whap. But I would get it as close as possible. Do the same thing. Its own channel of noise assist. Now that I saw that screen that Mickey just showed, where you can buy 2 channels of it, and I realized that moving your dust collection out of the room is an extremely expensive thing, but it would be ideal. But now you look at it like, okay, so I got to pour a pad outside the garage. I have to mount the thing. I have to build a shed around it because it can't be out in the weather. It could get really expensive, getting it out of the wood shop. Let's go to the next question. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, well, real quick. So actually, to Chris's point, made me think, so again, this is the difference between noise reduction and some of the newer voice isolation, again, quote unquote, AI or machine learning processing and plugins. Apple, again, ships with it natively. If you have an Apple device, you have it already. And that's a difference. So they try and isolate the unique properties of the voice and remove everything else versus just trying to take down the noise. A little bit different, but that's why in Chris's instance, flipping on the AirPods worked so well.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And Mickey, wrap it up.
Yeah, just to build on what you were mentioning earlier, Chris, how I think of this is how we would shoot, say, cooking shows, wherein we do place specific effects mics hidden within the set pointed at specific areas in the work surface. Couple mics on the stove, couple mics where you do the chopping, couple mics where they'd have the food processor, and we'd fade those up and down as necessary.
I just tape a lav to the chisel. Just get right in there. I wouldn't do that.
but yeah, like certainly hearing these sounds, especially like with crafts like these, the sounds could be used as a cue of, am I putting too much pressure on my tool? So I think it's important to carry that through to the experience of, a broadcast and letting the people that are learning along with Cindy or the other wood turners have that as, cues for them through their learning of wood turning.
Last week I watched a video and it was like the head audio engineer for like NBC Sports or something. I can't remember exactly what, but he was walking you through all of the effects microphones that they use for an NBA basketball game. And when you start looking, and it's significant. I think he had like 24 mics around the court to capture. He goes, well, this one just gets the squeak when they're under the hoop, and this is the swoosh, and this is the of a slam dunk, whatever. And so when you start looking at that, and then you internalize that for your own problem, and then you realize, yeah, maybe I do need just a mic very close, not exactly sure where, again, out of the danger zone of the lathe. But you might need a mic just for that chisel sound. Let's go to the next question.
This one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael. Anyone ever use Time Adjuster in ProTools or similar alignment plugins? When do you use them?
Mr. Francis?
So Time Adjuster is a delay plugin. It is a delay plugin without all the bells and whistles of normal creative delay plugins. So it will not do feedback. It will not do additional repeats. There's no blend, wet, dry control. It is simply moving something back in time. So it is for correcting latency issues or things that are out of time. And unfortunately, it only lives in measurements of samples. But it's great because it can do precision delays by sample. But oftentimes, my brain needs to actually use a calculator to figure out what is that actual number in milliseconds or feet or something like that. But all the time, we need to correct timing of things. And so Time Adjuster is a potential thing we can use to do that. Of course, you can take waveforms in Pro Tools and slide them in the timeline. But the problem with that is editing can mess that up. And you have to do that with every single piece of audio you have on that track, whereas this is a plugin that lives in real time and just moves things backwards in time. One of the things I use it most for, I usually actually use a simple delay plugin with set completely to wet, no original sound and no repeats. But I use this for microphone alignment. If I'm using a main array on an orchestra, and I put a close mic on the oboe player, that sound's going to get to the oboe mic in like 2 milliseconds, and it's going to take 20 milliseconds to get to my main array. And I want you to hear it from the main array first, because the precedent effect says you get all the information about that sound, localization, timbre, all that kind of stuff from the thing you hear first. So if you hear the close mic first, it's going to sound like a close mic oboe. But if I put that close mic oboe behind the main array, then it sounds like the main array. And so the timbre will be much more natural.
Mickey?
That's where I use it all the time.
Yeah, similar to what Jeff mentioned, this is not not very much creative tool. It's very much a utility tool. I use it when I need to adjust specific tracks going to one destination when another destination of the track doesn't need that delay. Because if I just nudge it in the timeline to sync it up, then that may that wouldn't be ideal for both destinations. And this is especially true when you're tracking live and you want to track it with something while monitoring a signal that is time aligned, but you want to send the undelayed signals to your monitor mix or your Q mix going to the studio. Other alignment tools that I use, there's the standard, elastic audio X form that I use heavily more when dialogue editing and trying to steal a syllable or a word from a different take and make that fit in, and I need to stretch or compress that syllable. I use X form a lot for that. There are other processors for it, but X form and elastic audio is easy because it's right on the timeline. In terms of trying to fit ADR, there's auto align, which is sorry, not auto align, vocalign, which is mostly used for aligning different vocal takes, but it has been really useful for aligning, like, again, individual syllables for ADR. And then in terms of phase aligning, say if you're cutting a TV show or a movie and you have a boom and multiple lavs and you want to mix a little lav with the boom just to give it a bit more presence, but they're not aligned in terms of phase, that's where auto align post from Audio Radix, I believe, comes in really handy, because you pick a reference audio clip and have it analyze that. Then you pick your destination clip and apply that same phase correlation to that audio clip, so that your boom and your multiple lavs are all phase aligned. That's another alignment tool that I use very heavily.
And Mr. Francis?
I'm just going to bring up the fact that time and phase is so important and so complex, and it's not something that we really talk about when we get into audio. When we get deeper and deeper and deeper into audio, you realize that so many things are affected by that. Alignment of speakers into space, alignment of reflections coming into a microphone, all that kind of stuff. I'm actually, I Tim McCulloch, who's been on Office Hours and is often in the chat, I don't know if he's in there today. Years ago on Office Hours, he put this quote into the chat so good that I copied it. It's, if an amplitude change does not do what you expected, it's probably a time issue. So time is something we always need to look at with sound, and these are tools to deal with.
Cool. Let's go to the next question.
This one's coming in from Todd Rains in Allen, Texas. Is there any empirical evidence from this group on the load of Fairlight live on your CPU and GPU during a production?
I want evidence. Jason.
Yes, here's my empirical evidence. Of the 5 out of 5 times that I have used it, not been paid to use it, and not used any plugins on it, it was perfect.
There you go, Mickey.
So yeah, Fairlight Live does have a meter in the lower right corner of the window that tells you how many cores are being utilized and the percentage of CPU utilization. I'm not 100% sure how reliable that is, and I wouldn't even attempt to get any data from that until an actual gold master, whatever they call it now, is released. But that information is there in the lower right corner of the window.
Next question.
From Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas, RØDELink II ships with a dedicated timecode I/O port, does built-in TC on a $14.99 wireless kit. Kill the case for a tentacle on top of every camera.
Alexander, school me.
Mickey will have a better answer than me, but I will say no. I mean, it's great that Rode has started putting timecode in some of their products, but just remember that Rode really started making consumer-grade products, and they don't really have penetration in the pro industry, and there's definitely a use case for having a dedicated timecode unit to inject that in.
But I think Rode was bought by a big audio. I think we're going to start seeing more out of Rode. Mickey and Jason.
Yeah, Lectrosonics was acquired by the Friedman Group, which is also the mother company of Rode. So when developing this new wireless system, Rode had worked with Lectrosonics in this. Assuming it does have temperature compensated crystal oscillators in them, and have a very accurate clocks in them from what they've learned from Lectrosonics. I would say, like, if you are working in a narrative situation where you break for lunch and then you rejam everything after lunch break, and every 6 hours or so you rejam, then I can see how you wouldn't need to throw a TC box. You just rely on this single box that acts as your wireless hop to camera, as well as your timecode generator or timecode box that hangs off the camera. But if you're in a situation where it's a unscripted show, reality shows, documentaries, ENG, run and gun work, where you don't have certainty of when you can stop down next time and rejam, then I would stick to my ambient and also my timecode systems TC boxes that do jam with each other wirelessly consistently. That way I don't even have to worry about things keeping time. They're always in sync as long as they can see each other.
Jason.
Paul, I'm not going to kill the case. I think if you know how to use tentacles, they work pretty well. And if you don't trust Rode, which I technically don't, then I think it's not a bad idea. So no, I'm not going to tell you not to spend your money.
Let's go to the next and last question.
Angelo Jack in Brooklyn, New York asks, hello, office hours. Need panel mics for folks with no mic technique. Need mics a small distance from them to see mouths on camera. Looking for good off-axis rejection, but large enough cone for head movement. Any advice?
Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, so I'll recommend one that has some interesting claims. I've seen an independent review, and it seems to do what it says, and I'll show a quick demo of it. It's the Lewitt Ray, and it's a traditional mic, but it has essentially a proximity sensor. So let me show you how they show that it works, and you should be able to hear this.
Here's how conventional microphones behave. When you get very close to the mic, it gets boomy and possibly even clips. And if you move away, the sound gets thinner, plus your levels drop. With Aura on, the microphone adapts to you. As you can hear, it dynamically adapts your levels and tone according to your distance. And as your voice now stays in focus, you can move naturally.
And so what's fascinating about it is it is also just self-powered. So you don't need any additional power, batteries, or anything else like that. And it seems ideal, and yet we don't see it in the wild, or at least I haven't. So buyer beware, but it seems like a perfect solution for non-pro podcasters.
Alexander?
Yeah, I love Lewitt as a mic company. I've tested the Ray. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's a pretty good sounding mic. It actually uses the same capsule as the LCT 440, which is their top selling, $400 or whatever it is, condenser microphone with a 1-inch capsule. But it's, for me, I generally recommend the Electrovoice RE20s. They're a much longer end address dynamic mic, but it's hard to go wrong with that. It's been a staple in broadcast since the late 60s, and it has their patented what they call variable D technology, which accomplishes the same thing that thing does, that the Ray does, but without active circuitry. And I use that on podcasts because a lot of people that are guests that are being interviewed do not have good mic technique. In fact, most of them haven't even been in front of a microphone. And so what that does is it reduces the proximity effect issue. When you get really close, you get that buildup of bass. So it adds for more, it allows for more consistency, and also it's a little more forgiving, even though it has very good off-axis rejection. If you go 2 inches, off-axis left to right, you don't lose your voice completely. So I really like the RE20.
Okay, let's go to Mickey.
Yeah, with I'm not entirely sure what production situation this is. Is this a podcast? Is this people talking on stage? Is this just a roundtable discussion in a panel that's being recorded in a studio environment, like a controlled environment? Different situations would call for different solutions for me. But what I would think of, what I thought of initially is, in terms of bad microphone technique, headset mic, keep it stuck to their face. If they move their heads, it moves with their heads. I'd go that route, especially if this is an environment where there is where there is sound reinforcement. There's a PA speaker. Getting the microphone nice and close also helps you with your gain before feedback. If this is an environment where it's just like a panel discussion that's being recorded in a nice, studio where it's controlled, then I would go with lavalier microphones. They're relatively unobtrusive. Stick with Omnis with this, of course. So as they move their heads, you don't get much of a change in terms of pickup pattern. And they tend to sound nice and open and natural. They're not very forgiving if it's an uncontrolled environment. But if you're in a studio, then I'd stick with lavs.
And Jason.
Well, if this becomes chronic, then you can also always have, the board op, just when they start moving away, just turn themselves way down in their mix. And then when they go, what? You just point at the microphone. No, not really.
And Mr. Francis, wrap it up.
I'm just going to caution that Lewitt Ray mic has some really cool technology. Please don't use that in a PA live situation. Because the gain of the mic is going up as the person is walking away from the mic. And like what Jason was talking about, you always get people who are like, they start and they've got the mic here and they're talking and they're amateurs and they begin to drop the mic. As audio engineers, the instinct is to turn them up. No, you need to turn them down so they stop hearing themselves in the room and they bring the mic back up.
Good trick.
Otherwise, you're just going to be into a crazy feedback situation.
It's a good trick. All right. Well, thanks. Sorry we're a little late, especially to the back-end crew. I want to thank everybody that gives their time to make all this happen. We really appreciate it. If we were to have traveled around the world to have this discussion here on episode 2234, it would have taken us 30,000 miles, 48,000 kilometers, but we use freedom units here. And that's 237 million SM58s, which are basically the size of a banana for scale. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next time.
I also find that if they have a shirt collar button, you can always just take a rubber band and attach it to the mic stand, and that's quite effective in keeping them.
That sounds
nice,
clever.
like a leash.
I used to, if a guitarist would, crank his volume after we did sound check, I would blast him in his wedge. I'd just go, you know what? Screw you. And I just crank it. And he'd go, whoa. And you'd see him like step back and
eye for an eye, Chris.
reach down with his pinky and turn it down a little. Anyway, I got to run. I got things to do. See you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
See you, Chris.
Backstage. I really appreciate everything. Bye.
Take it easy. Okay.
See you, everyone.
Bye.